Hi, I'm Jade Eagles, and today we're going to make an Italian beef with a little bit of a twist, while talking about whether or not you should pay off your mortgage early. So with that, let's get started. To be honest, I love to cook, and I have a lot of my friends asking me to make this Italian beef sandwich from some series called The Bear. I watched an episode, apparently it's a comedy. My God, I don't know if it's a comedy for me. Look, I enjoyed it, but I'm not gonna make an Italian beef, I'm gonna make an Australian beef. And because you Yanks don't really like Vegemite, for whatever reason, by the way, you should try a Vegemite and avocado on sourdough toast, by the way. I'm gonna do a little of an Australian twist on it. So you always talk about throwing another shrimp on the barbie for us Aussies. So I'm gonna add some shrimp to it, and I'm gonna add a chimichurri sauce on top of it. Yeah, I know, chimichurri South American, but Australia, we're global, so we're gonna own that too. We've got 4 pounds of beef, top side here. We're gonna cut that into 1 pound blocks there. I'm just gonna cut it along against the grain there. And then we're gonna wanna sear it. Kind of get some of that caramelization going on there. So we've got our preheated cast irons. We want that around medium-high heat. I might have that up a little bit too high there. And we just want to sear it on each side there. So let's get those in. Oh yeah, mama. That sounds good. Nice searing there. So while we wait for these to sear, let's talk about the pros and cons of paying off your mortgage early. So I hear a lot of clients always asking, shall I pay off my mortgage early? To be honest, it really depends on your situation. There's a number of factors that you really need to take into account. I would say it comes down to whether or not you want to look at follow your heart, follow your mind, go with those emotions, or do you actually want to look at the math? So one of the benefits of paying off a mortgage would be peace of mind. And I get that. There is an emotional weight that is lifted off a client knowing that they can go into retirement or even before retirement having already paid off the mortgage. Let's set the facts straight. Most people actually don't even pay off their mortgage before going into retirement or ever. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but for some clients, that emotional baggage, and it's kind of like that weight that's pulling you down there, it is enough of a reason to pay off your mortgage early, no matter any of the other stuff that we're going to talk about today. We're adding the beef stock to deglaze and get up all those little jibbers into the sauce, which are going to add additional flavor. And who doesn't want additional flavor? And now it's time to add our spices. We've got fennel seeds that have been roasted. We've also got coriander seeds. We've got some oregano or oregano. We've got garlic salt. We've got onion. We've got paprika. We've got chili flakes. Look at that. And we've got some pepper. Look at those. Bring the stock to a simmer and then we'll get it in the oven to finish it off. A common thing that I then would hear from a client is, think about that interest savings. Like by paying off my mortgage early, I'm no longer having to allocate a certain part of my budget to that mortgage payment, which I totally understand. Like that can be substantial. It could be thousands of dollars each month there. So it definitely is a pro to paying that off, but there's other factors that we really need to look at. And we're going to kind of get into them soon, of like looking at your interest rate, because maybe if you've got a lower interest rate, it might not actually make sense to pay it off early. Now that it's come to a simmer there, we want to get this bad boy in the oven and finish it off. Before we do that, we're going to make a little teepee, a little bit of parchment paper. Lay that on top, snuggle it up. Get the lid on it. So now that the beef is in there, we're gonna kind of get onto like the topping of it. I think it's a giardinara. I can't even pronounce the bloody word. So what we would call it in Australia is bloody gibbers. So let's make the gibbers now. We've got the collie, we've got our bell peppers, We've got a poblano, we've got some serranos, we've also got some celery, and we've got some tiger shrimp. That's going to be our little Australian, twist on the Australian jibbers. We want to break those down into little florets. Let's do our celery. Do the poblano. I'm going to cut the seeds out on those ones. But we're going to leave the seeds in for the serrano, give it a bit of heat. Serrano chilies, I'm going to leave all those seeds on. 1/4 inch pieces. Bell pepper. So we've got the heat. Cauliflower's a bit of a neutral flavor, but I love cauliflower. And then we just got to do the shrimp. So I got some tiger shrimp here. I love the colors on them. I'm just going to loosely chop them. So we've got our raw ingredients there. What we're going to do is quickly saute them in the pan there. Now it's come up to temperature, we're going to do the veggies first. We want to get some char to that. Once the veggies are getting close, we'll then add our shrimp to it and finish it up. But I am going to leave this on a little bit longer to get some color there. If need be, add a little bit more olive oil to kind of get that char. Don't get me wrong. One of the cons of paying off your mortgage early is really your house is an illiquid asset. There's going to be time that you need to take to only list it, to sell it. What happens if you're in a down market there? So by paying it all off, you don't have access to all that equity really quickly. And that's a con, that you need to be considerate of. Do you have enough other assets to cover those, one-off events or those short-term emergencies? So there's a lot of factors that you need to take in to versus just thinking, I'm going to feel fantastic by paying off my mortgage early. I don't have to worry about it. It's not that simple. Feelings are important, don't get me wrong, but there's so many other factors that need to be taken into account. That looks about done now. Let's finish up the rest of the veggies. Season it. So I hear what you're thinking. One of the pros, though, of paying off your mortgage early, or paying it down at least, is that you're actually increasing your equity. And I agree with you. There's so many ways of looking at that. One of the benefits then of paying it off or paying it down is you've now actually increased the equity. Why is that important? Or what's some of the benefits that can come with paying down your mortgage or paying it off? Is you've now actually increased equity. And you've actually now got the ability to tap into that as a source of funds, whether that be to supplement your retirement or supplement your lifestyle, whether it to be to pay for earthquake insurance. We live here in California. What happens if, we've got cities here sliding off the side of mountains? How do you pay for that sort of stuff there? So by one of the benefits of paying that off is you can tap into that equity that you've built up in that property growing in value. One of the best ways of tapping into your equity on the place is a home equity line of credit. And every bank offers those, okay? So make sure you do shop around though. Make sure you find the best rates on that. But by using a home equity line of credit, you get to kind of tap into all that equity and growth on your property without really having to either refinance. A home equity line of credit is a way that you can kind of peel off a little segment of the equity or the growth that you've had in the property there, be able to kind of use as well. Don't go to Vegas, of course, but you kind of get to kind of do some house remodels and other sort of things like that, put a pool in the backyard, and that can also increase the value of your property. Let's add back the other veggies that we'd already previously cooked up, and then let's add our shrimp to it. Shrimp won't need long at all to cook there. Might add a little bit more olive oil. Look at those colors there. Gonna have a kick to it. My Australian jibbers are done. Let's kind of get that set off to the side now. Turn off the heat. Before you race off and pay off your mortgage, let's think of some of the downsides of paying that off. So you've gone ahead and paid off the mortgage. If you need to do a home improvement or a renovation, how are you going to do that? All that additional money that you've now gone to pay off your mortgage is now tied up in the property. So you're now going to be probably restricted to doing a home equity line of credit or a refinance. Typically, both of those, depending on where we are with interest rates, are probably going to be higher. Look, I don't know where your interest rate is, and I don't know where we are with HELOC rates. You're going to have to look at those together. But typically what you see is both of those are higher than to get a new purchase, okay? So that's something that you need to be taking into consideration on, you could have actually had that money invested by not paying off your mortgage sooner. You could have actually had it invested in the market. You can actually then use that money to tap in to pay for those renovations and repairs instead of tapping into a HELOC. So let's move on to making our Aussie South American chimichurri sauce. We've got some flat leaf parsley. We've got some oregano, or as you guys call it, I think oregano. We have a bit of olive oil here. We've got some red wine vinegar. I got my trustworthy jam jar. These are great. And we're just going to chop this up. It can be loose, it can be coarse, whatever your feeling is. All right, flat leaf parsley done. That's good enough for me. Get this oregano. Red chili. Garlic. Bit of pepper. Salt. Looks pretty good. Give it a little shake. One of the things that I always like to look to as a financial advisor is the tax side of whatever strategy that we're looking at. That's the same in importance when we look at whether or not we should be paying off the mortgage. One of the things that you actually give up of paying off your mortgage early is that you lose certain tax benefits, okay? Now, I'm not a tax professional, so I would certainly encourage you to talk to your CPA or your, tax professional there to learn what those are. But there's certain tax deductions that you do get by having a mortgage. So definitely talk to your CPA or tax professional to take that into account when you're planning your overall, decision there. So you've already heard me talk about beforehand, instead of just paying off my mortgage, why don't I just invest it in the market? Hold on a minute. Well, you're probably going to have to look at your own risk tolerance there to find out whether or not the way that you're comfortable to invest is going to be able to kind of, offset whatever interest rate you have on your mortgage. Now, if you are happy to take risk there, there's going to be some volatility in there. So not only do you have to look at your risk appetite, but you've also now going to have to look at that time horizon on how long you have to invest that money for to kind of go with where that volatility, because it's not always going to return the standard return every single year. It's going to be ups and downs. Are you going to be comfortable with that? Is that going to kind of fit in with your overall financial picture of not paying off your mortgage sooner? Once again, something else to consider in making this decision. Bottom line, it really just depends. So I'm sorry that you've sat through all this to kind of get to the point of it really does depend. And so it should. Your situation is totally different to someone else's. And we really need to craft and tailor our recommendation to your situation and your feelings. There are so many moving factors there that it cannot just be a cut and dry decision there. So talk to your advisor, talk to your CPA. Heck, if you don't have an advisor, hit me up, okay? I'm more than happy to talk to you and make sure that we're making the right decision for you and your unique situation. All right. So now that it's out of the oven, we actually want to cool it for 24 hours. And what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it up in saran wrap. By wrapping it up in saran wrap, it's kind of like concentrating and preserving those juices all around the meat there before we start carving it. So let's get that done. One in. All right, we've got those wrapped. Let's get them in the fridge for 24 hours. Gonna bring that up to a boil and then bring it down to a simmer. Now that it's come up to a simmer, we want to turn it off, strain it, and put that into our crock pot for when we're gonna put the beef in there to finish it off. So let's get that strained. Make sure you be careful with this. I'm gonna strain that. And by straining it, we're keeping all the flavors there, but we're also kind of removing those impurities that have of the seeds and stuff. What I find, it helps it if you kind of give it a little agitation down there to get the rest of the au jus out and keeping those solids there. Let's toss that one in the trash. So we've strained the au jus there. We're going to get that into the crock pot and then we'll be adding the beef in shortly. So because we're here in LA, with the magic of Hollywood, it's been 24 hours. Let's get the beef out of the fridge now. What we want to do is slice this as thin as possible. So get your sharpest knife, sharpen it, and we're gonna make sure that you're cutting across the grain. And then we're gonna cut into thin slices and then put it into our au jus reduction over there. Look, I'm not one of those fancy guys that you might see online who has a professional meat slicer. I'm just gonna use an old-fashioned knife. I've sharpened it, of course. I'm gonna do my best to slice it as thin as possible. What's gonna help compensate if I don't slice it as thin as possible is I'm gonna put it back into this beef reduction with the au jus, and that's gonna enhance it anyway. Make sure you cut across the grain. Whew, that was a lot. So we've got our beef thinly sliced. A little inconsistent, I must admit. My first ones were a lot better. Oh yeah. So we've got our beef in there. What we wanna do is now kind of give that a good stir, get all that sauce fully coating it. So what we're gonna do is sit that back on slow cooker, low heat, 20 to 30 minutes, it would be good to go. Next step in my Australian beef, let's cut the buns. So I'm using a little French bread here. You could use any other sort of French roll, a hoagie. So let's get the beef in. My Aussie beef. Look at that. Get a decent serving. That should be about enough. So I heard that some people in Chicago like to dunk it. Probably not going to dunk it. I'm just going to put the au jus on top of it like this there. And then we're going to add my Australian gibbers or whatever people call it there on top. It's got the shrimp there. It's got the peppers. Bit of a kick to it, I must admit. And then we're gonna add the chimichurri on top. Looking good. Let's get a bit of that au jus in there for a dip. So there you have it, my take on an Italian Aussie beef sandwich while talking about the pros and cons on paying off a mortgage early. Enjoy. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with my latest cooking videos when they get released. If you have any financial planning questions, feel free to reach out to me at thewealthgardenfs.com, where you can reach out to me directly and we can schedule a call to learn about your specific situation. I'm Jade Eagles and I'll see you again soon.